another episode of The Tower at UNN. My name is Dr. Juko, the host and the presenter of this show. I am so privileged and honored tonight to be with you trying to discuss training issues within Uganda as usual on Sundays. And it is always very important that we'll get sense out of those discussions. This week has had a lot of issues that have gone beyond people's understanding, and many of our people are still wondering what is going on in Uganda. We have the issue of the machete assailants trying to go so rampant, regardless of the government response. There's so many issues that have come across related to the issue of Bijambia. One of the issues that is really disturbing is the arrest of the two members of parliament that they think are part of this saga. It is also very disturbing to have the extension of the murders to other parts of Buganda. Everybody is wondering, can't there be a solution to this? We are going to dig deep into this discussion. And in the studios, I have Lawrence Semgoma all the way from Boston. He's an analyst, and he's a cyber security expert. And we're going to have him dig deep into these issues. Welcome to this show, Lawrence Semgoma. Go ahead.
Especially those that, if resolved, can take our country to greater heights. I'm very, very honored to be here. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure, Lawrence. Again, in the studios, I have Mr. Chendo Ahmed. Mr. Chendo, you're welcome back to this show. As usual, Mr. Chendo is an analyst. He's very experienced and he knows a lot regarding issues trending in Uganda. You're welcome, Mr. Chendo Ahmed.
Thank you, Dr. Juko. Only I wish I could congratulate you upon your exploits, academic exploits. I want to say congratulations. I'm also happy to be here to be discussing matters of national interest. And I want still to thank even the fellow panelists who have joined us this evening. In our place, it is already evening, unlike where you are. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chendo. It's a pleasure having you with us tonight. I also bring to you on phone this time, Desire the analyst, all the way from Toronto. I wonder whether it's Toronto, but Canada. And Desire, you are welcome, regardless of not seeing your pictures. Everybody is just knowing who you are. Can you greet our viewers, Desire? Desire, your audio is very low. Can you speak a little higher, please?
And for everyone who has lost a loved one in the past few months, past year, my heart goes out, and as always, I'm grateful and happy to be here to discuss matters of national security and matters that can help us get Uganda to where it needs to be.
Thank you. The technical team, I think, is gonna work on Desire's voice or sound. We're gonna let me start direct with Lawrence. Lawrence, let's first start with issues that have trended within a week.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jacob, once again. About training issues, I think I would only concentrate on what happened yesterday, I think 11 years or so ago, here in the States, when the event that changed the US for what it is right now happened, which is 9/11. Everyone remembers that day like it happened yesterday, when suicide bombers took over a plane and rammed it into the tallest buildings they could find within Manhattan. Well, that is still, that is one of the biggest news that we have, at least from where I am here in Boston. People's minds are still fresh with all that happened that day, the horror, the grief, the loss, everything that changed America for what it is then almost permanently. We all know that after that, the US got into almost a 2-decade war. Actually, it's a decade war. And they just recently withdrew the troops from the Middle East, which, you know, has also left some very interesting turn of events there, that even after a decade in that place, not much has changed. It still leaves more question of whether that was the right decision. But leaving that aside, just concentrating on what happened here in the States, people are still mourning the loss they got that day for their loved ones. People were in their offices that day, people who knew nothing about what was going to happen to them. Families were changed almost forever when that happened. And to me, that is one of the biggest events from where I'm standing, besides other issues that might be happening out there globally. I think I'll leave that at that. I would leave Mr. Ahmed to give us the training issues for Uganda, even if I am privy to what has actually been happening behind the wires. Thank you so much, Dr. Juko.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure, Lawrence, as usual. Thank you for the update of what is trending, especially here in the US. Mr. Chendo Ahmed, I want you to also to have a switch on what have trended in Uganda. What have you seen trending in Uganda, and how do you look at them analytically?
I want to thank you very much, Dr. Joko, for this opportunity once again. I think this is my second time to appear here. Incidentally, when I last appeared here, I got someone threatening me that, you see, that UNN is bugged by the state, that it is a state blog. So I said, well, if the state is bugging into this, well, I think we're not saying anything outside the realities. I think we are trying to say what we are really going through as Ugandans, and as people who are also entitled to our opinions. Now, what has been trending of late, actually, we have lost a very big personnel or personage that is in the names of BMK. It has been one of the biggest news since he died. And I want to say, well, want to send our condolences to all those people who have dealt with the BMK. Today, he's joined his Lord, like all of us will do. Secondly, in Uganda, there's also a very big issue of security. I don't know whether I should call it security, but I think it is insecurity in the names of machete wielding personages. These are people who have threatened, I think right now it is almost the whole of Buganda. Some people may be even taking.
Yes, possibly we have a problem with his network, Mr. Chendo's network, and I think we're gonna be able to correct that. Let me go to Desire. Desire, can you tell us your training issues today and how do you relate them and make sense out of them? I'm afraid, Desire, we can't get your output. We can't get your output. Lawrence, let me start with you deep into the discussion. Today, there is a big issue that has not stopped trending. And this issue of the machete, the vijambia, as locally known, is disturbing every Ugandan. First of all, I want us to dig deep into the history of massacres in Uganda. There are several massacres that have occurred in Uganda since possibly 1986. Let's look. I don't know whether you have anything beyond that, but you know better what you're gonna look at. Let's have a look at the history of these massacres.
Massacres that have actually happened specifically in Uganda on that regard. It is hard to tell which is the oldest, but I am sure before, for what is actually documented, I'll just concentrate on what is documented. I think the first one we have is the 1966 Kabaka crisis. That is probably the earliest we have. I am not privy to anything before that, though I'm sure there were some, especially for those territories in Uganda that were resisting the British rule. Most of that is not documented because, of course, the perpetrators were our leaders. Then, like I said last time, always evidence of the massacres comes out at the end and after the fact, and usually it is committed by those in power. That trend has not changed. I look at 1966 first to begin with. That day came, and you all know what happened, or at least every Ugandan out there knows exactly what happened in 1966. Most people just look at it and just will just try to politicize the whole issue and concentrate on the Kabaka being the Kabaka not having interests of the entire country and just those of Buganda that triggered the Prime Minister then, Dr. Apollo Milton Obote, to come and reign into his palace, kill as many people as he could, destroy all the property he could, and then, of course, after that, install himself as the president. The politics in the issue kind of made people sort of not pay as much attention to the fact that this was actually an outright massacre that happened. And actually, when you go back in Ugandan history, you'll find that that is not actually termed or recorded as necessarily a massacre, but it is. And the reason for that is globally, where else massacres have happened? There have been massacres happening all over the world, by the way. This is not just a Ugandan issue. I would just want to take your attention to just a small incidents, not even very far back then, that happened in just the 1970s here in San Francisco, California. There was a Golden Dragon massacre. And in this, a Hong Kong American street gang committed just violent shootings and just went and killed a bunch of people there. The death toll together when that incident happened was just 5 people. 5 people. But guess what? American historians still recorded that as a massacre. It's just 5 people. Now, when we go back home to where we are, how many people died in the 66 crisis? I would put that to hundreds. And of course, we might never know the numbers because the government at least was careful enough to hide those facts such that it doesn't seem like it was that bad. But I understand figures came out later and revealed that hundreds of people died. The number is still debatable, no one counted. And again, if I killed, and I know the more I kill, the worse I'm going to look, I'll make sure that I downplay those numbers. Moving up closer to, I think, the Min's regime, same thing. People were killed. The numbers are also confidential. They're just reported after the fact that, yes, I think killed that many people. We're still wrestling with the numbers. We don't have the facts. And I think this is probably the issue with Uganda. We don't want to record some of those bad events like the way our land brothers this side of the world usually do. However bad something is, it's going to be documented, it's going to be on file. And at some point, if someone wants to access those files, right now, the access to all that others, Classified Information Act was signed, and you can access some of these files and see exactly what happened. This happening, it's just to make sure that the truth gets out there. People get the closure they need. People lose loved ones when these events happen. So there's need to have that information out there and the truth out there, just like we are right now trying to discuss all these issues that are trending. If I may go closer to the 1986 where you wanted us to begin, well, again, that's the other thing. We don't have the actual numbers, but everyone makes up a number. And of course, I think by that time we're really doing a bad job trying to keep any records. You can, even if you gave a number that maybe 1 million people died when the current regime was getting into power, it's hard to back up those numbers with actual bodies or persons. We don't have a record of, okay, when people died, was there any evidence collection that was done or trying to document the people they found lying on their, on the road and all these other places in the villages? There is no evidence for that. We're usually very good at hiding all our dirty linen from the public. We're never going to document this, and we know why we don't, because we just want to look good to the rest of the world that yes, that happened, and it's like Africa is just in a mist of mystery. Everyone doesn't know, but we know that something bad is happening. What happens is you just keep hiding the evidence, not putting it out there, such that we might try to keep a sober or a good image out there. And the reason for that is because there's always rewards for having a good image internationally. Like donors will come in, they will give you all the money they need. We need investors to come in and invest in our country. There are all those other spin-offs that we want, and that's the reason we're always going to try to project a good image out there and not concentrate on that those bad events that shock and awe people and leave them permanently damaged. I'll just tell you this, that when people or a person loses a life out there, in a hopeless situation like it is happening right now, some gun has just flown over his fence and come and hack them to death. The people who depend on the people who depend on those people, their lives are shattered. They probably never find food. They probably never go to school. So looking at the repercussions of just people dying in these ways, it's to me that is I don't know where to place that on any scale of whether we really evaluate what happens when events like this happen to our people. So I would like to leave that at that, Dr. Joko, for now.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Lawrence, for all the insight you've given. I have in the studios as usual. Desire. I think the technicals tried to get her, and everybody's gonna see her as usual. Yes, Desire. You're welcome here at Tower at the UNN as usual. We always want you here to make some sense of out of these issues. Before we go to that, can we have you give us the training issues that you think have been of great importance in Uganda? The sound, your voice is not yet clear. I'm afraid we haven't yet gotten your sound. We get the picture, but not your sound.
Oh, how about now? Sorry,
yeah, okay. You are good to go now. That's great.
That was on me. That's on me. That's on my end. About the trending issues, I'm going to start from where I left off. Sorry that I wasn't audible as before, but I just wanted to go through a few issues. As I was saying before, one, we're going to dive a little bit deeper, and that is the accusations and the allegations and the rhetoric that is being generated around the massacre that is happening in Masaka and around Uganda with the machete murders and killings that appear to be organized gang crime. We will dive deeper into that. I thought that was important to bring to the table, but as important as it is, it's the main topic of today's show. And then the second one, I wanted to talk about the hyper vaccination that's going to be happening in Uganda. Uh, so far, a lot of countries have donated, from China to the US to the UK and to Norway, have donated vaccines to Uganda all over again. And right now, there's 120,000 vaccines that need to be vaccinated into people before the end of September, as they expire at the end of September. The Ugandan government has said that it's going to have vaccination stations. It's taking vaccination to marketplaces. It's going to set up stations for people to have easy access. But then the question is again about these vaccines, because there's worries about AstraZeneca that was banned in Norway because of the blood clots that it causes as a side effect. That was one of the news. And another news piece that I thought was significant and important is that Uganda and Rwanda seem to be in move into talking negotiation between the two nations about frictions that exist because of espionage. And this seems to be a conversation that Ugandans have been left out. I did not even know we had tensions with Rwanda, given our history with Rwanda, given that the current president of Rwanda, if we do know our history, actually fought in the Ugandan Bush War, was part of our police, and moved back to Rwanda. So the tensions that have been there and rising, Rwanda claims that Uganda holds its citizens, kills them, and mistreats its citizens in Uganda, whereas Uganda also claims the same, and with the border shut down. So they plan to be moving on to some kind of peace talks, but Rwanda says that they cannot say it's peace for now. So this is a conversation a lot of us have been left out of, and I hope that bringing this to the table today, we start to think of why this rhetoric and narrative is happening and has been happening without even the involvement of most Ugandans, because this was news to me, and it seemed weird that Rwanda had closed its border to Uganda, but now it seems to be explained in matters of espionage, murder, mistreatment of, and apparently, allegedly, the Ugandan government has been supporting opposition politicians in Rwanda, according to that. That's where the bickers do come from So I hope we have a good show. And yeah, those were my updates for the week.
Thank you, Desire, as usual. Thank you very much for the insight. And I think, again, Lawrence, when you look at these massacres that are happening, it seems like at a time it is directed to a certain group of people, especially when and after the election, before and after the election. If you look at the political trend right from 1986, there was a time when we had trouble with the northern part of Uganda and many people were massacred. And then we had another issue with eastern part of Uganda. You remember the Mokula incident and all that stuff. Things went that direction because that side was not supporting the regime. Here comes after the election when we have actually the majority of the people in the central part of Uganda region supported a different political organization. How do you relate this to what is happening, given the history and the trend of possibly political situation? How do you relate to this?
Thank you so much, Dr. Juko, once again. Looking at how these events are unfolding across the country, because initially, or at least this week, I think I overheard on one of the live wires from Uganda that Honorable Kahinda Otafire was like, these incidents are happening in Masaka simply because the residents there did not vote the NRM. And to me, this is a big statement coming from one of some of the founding members of the current regime. You really can't come up and say certain people are dying because they did not exactly vote for you. Then again, this, I think, directly relates to what happened in northern Uganda earlier on, which is the CONI or the LRA war up there. I think the LRA in northern Uganda, we could also use almost the same statement saying that it's because those people had those insecurities in that area simply because they did not support the current regime. That is true to a certain extent because the previous regime was comprised of members predominantly from the northern part of Uganda itself. So looking at that, then you can see that we're still now, we can refer or rather relate what is happening today to what happened then. And these are now answers starting to come in. These are like confirmations. Some of these statements, some people always say, you're going to get the answers in the questions or rather in the statements. Some of these people or other members of the leadership are going to make out there in public. You really can't come out and say people are dead, not just one person. You have 25, I think the current death toll right now in Masaka is about 25 people according to the Daily Monitor at the moment. 25 people are dead and then you say, yes, they didn't vote, that's why they die. So what do you mean, who is killing then? If they voted, and again, this is kind of a reverse psychology, which is actually not working right now. If you say they didn't vote, what are you trying to say? Who is killing? Is it the opposition killing? Why would the opposition, like it has happened right now, where I think 2 members of parliament from Kampala have been arrested in this? How does that relate? How does that relate to the statement you're trying to make? Either you're out of sync or you're actually answering a different question if you come out and say something like that. You say they didn't vote. So if they voted the opposition, is it the opposition then now killing? Or is it the state? Therein, I think, lies the answer. So if they didn't vote, is it the hate? I don't know. It doesn't. It is quite interesting that someone makes a statement like that and they just get away with it. And those ones are even not even summoned by the police to come and give a statement as to why they would give a statement like that. I am not sure which statements the two honorable members made, that is Honorable Sewanyana and Honorable Segirinya, to warrant them to be summoned and arrested. So that still is not quite giving a good feel to the case and on the boots, for the boots on ground, and to whether they're doing a good job up there. Expanding this this discussion further, well, you've summoned them to the CID. The CID has summoned them and then also detained them. Now you wonder, it's still an ongoing investigation. You haven't really committed them. But then I understand that the law suggests that if it is a murder case or anything of a sort, those people are meant to be arrested. Myself, the only question I have is, where is the evidence? Calling out Honorable Segirinya and Honorable Sewanyana, where is the evidence you're putting out? There's no evidence yet that is actually being presented, apart from just the newspapers just reporting that these have been summoned and they have been arrested, and right now they are detained. But at least if we move to another part of the country, which is in Entebbe itself, the police at least tried to put up suspects for starters, and there was also evidence attached that they picked up from the suspects. I would like us to focus just on that later. I think for three people were arrested in Entebbe in regards to being suspected for being part of the machete wielding team, and one of them was actually a former bodyguard to the mayor himself, who was threatened in this letter. When you look at that letter that the police put out, it's quite interesting. Just look at how the letter is and how it is worded. Like, these people just got a piece of paper that they were using maybe to count something. I don't know, whatever they had before, and then they wrote they wrote the message there. They're demanding for their 2 million, and it looked like they had a grudge. There's some mystery to this. And indeed, this is the other theory I was trying, that was hypothesized here last time, that there are answers as to why these people are getting killed. Why? In this case, if it's the former bodyguard who is conniving with these other suspects, and they have the time to write a very good note for us there to leave, and they make sure that they leave it for the target, it also puts up more questions right there. If you're a murderer, I don't want to say a good murderer, you might not really need to put the letters out there. But if you have the time to put the letter and make sure that someone gets it, you're trying to leave a trail, you have a big message. That's how I look at it. You have a big message, and you want you're trying to explain your event. You've contemplated this. You have the time to write a note, take it to the person, not kill them, go back home, organize a crew of 2-3 people, and then maybe go back and commit the act. Now, this is at least the best case we have at the moment from the police. By the way, if you go to the police website right now, Uganda Police, you're going to see that for the entire week, they've only just been posting or giving press releases about what is happening in Massacre. This is good, at least right now. There's a blanket of news that shows that some effort is put in trying to investigate these matters. But again, I was like, okay, if the police is doing enough or not doing enough, what are the other agencies doing? I tried to see if the army was probably picking interest in this trend. I saw nothing of the sort. The army doesn't seem to be interested in what is happening across the country with the machete wielding men. We've had a few videos. I think we'll have time to view those later on in the show. of how these people actually organize themselves, undo their pangas, get into people's residences, do whatever they have to do, and get out. How do people get all this with all the LDUs that we have and are funded across the country to keep people safe? More so, especially in at least the greater metropolitan area, which could include even probably areas of Entebbe. How are these people getting away with it? And then the police just comes out and says, well, some of these incidences, like the video that circulated around at the beginning of the week, they say it is not related to what is happening in Masaka. Well, what is happening in Kampala is not related to what is in Masaka, but then you're arresting MPs from Kampala, relating them to the case in Masaka. That seems to give a message that you don't know what you're doing. You're arresting people who are, 70 miles away from the crime scene. It doesn't make any sense. And then when events like this, like the one in Kibia happened, they are like, no, then this is not related to Masaka. And again, I would think that in that case, if they manage to commit the atrocities in Masaka, or actually craft that plan to hack the people that were killed in Masaka, then Kampala should even be easier for them, or even Entebbe, if that is exactly what their interest is. But we are we've shielded the MPs from the central region from what is happening closer to them, and we're taking them to what is farther from them. That is
yes, Lawrence,
kind of
for purposes of evidence, let's first have the video of the machete people that was caught on CCTV, and then you can continue from there.
Thank you so much.
Okay, I think we need to, the technical team will bring that video later on. Let's continue, Lawrence.
All right, thank you so much again, once again, Dr. Jericho. It's quite unfortunate that we're unable to bring in the videos that have been circulating around about these panga murdering men, and it's interesting at least I haven't seen in the videos, which is quite surprising, or not surprising in a way, that of course it's usually men who lead in such acts. But what I can say to leave this at that right there is, we need more evidence as all these milestones are getting. We're getting to all these milestones in solving the murders that are happening across. If you're detaining MPs from Kampala, try to put the evidence out, like the way you did in Entebbe. So much as that evidence is also a little questionable of how it is handled and then pushed out there. It leaves a lot to be desired. There is another. I think it happened. It is
Lawrence,
just.
let's have the video. Let's have the video. My producer says he has the video now. Yes, Lawrence, go ahead, because it doesn't have sound. It's you to explain to us.
So these men are coming out. It's like they know where they are, because usually if you are getting into a place where you are not sure of what is there, maybe there's a dog or there's anything that might surprise you, any alarms or something. And again, I don't think they knew that these they were on TV, or rather they were getting filmed right now. They're just walking like they know exactly where they are going, and they know nothing is going to stand in their way. Yes, they're trying to tiptoe such that maybe they don't make any sound, but the confidence with which they are moving, it gives you, or it starts to answer some of the questions people were actually giving or rather asking out there. These people know where they're going. They know their target. They know no one is watching. They know no one is going to fight them. And there are many. 10 is a very big number, by the way. 10 is a very, very, very big number. But again, if you're to go to the last part of that video, you're going to see that I think they were not able to, fortunately, kill or rather harm anyone in that residence. They just climbed out from the back wall and off they went. But I am so glad that this kind of evidence actually comes out and it is out there in the public domain to see exactly what is happening. Just looking at that evidence as is, I would have wanted to see, or rather, hear something from the Uganda police trying to focus on just this evidence which is coming out. A video like that, it's bad that someone, would have gotten hurt, but then it's so good that at last we have a basis to start carrying out an investigation. Than some other MPs that are in this other area relying on letters that are dropped that even could be planted. Right now you have first-hand primary evidence. So can we try to get those people out? We don't need to have sketches that usually don't look like human beings that the police usually puts out. And you are like, who is this they're trying to show committed a certain act? The pictures are there, the images are there. And it's good that that camera had night vision. We can at least try to get a good outline of the people who are responsible for these massacres. So we haven't had or haven't seen any news like that, at least in coming from the press release that the police is making. But the video is making rounds everywhere. I think most Ugandans have gotten them in their inbox. I am part of a good number of groups, and all of them were just sharing this information. If at all it helps, that will be the primary focus of the investigation right now, because that is good evidence. You don't get it better than that. You got the killers in action. You see how they move, you see the formation, you see their attack strategy, how many they are. Pick up whatever clues you can from the video, and then start from right there. We should now be having at least an image board having all these faces. And by the way, that from that angle, you're just getting the backside for them attacking, I think, from the front of I think that's the front of the house. If you get the final part of the video, they try to exit. As they exit, the camera was at least able to get most of their images at the front. Those are very good images to put out there in public, and then you're like, okay, people, these are the people we need in connection to what is happening in the country. But I am not sure anything in that direction is happening as far as the investigation is concerned. Or if it is, maybe it is happening in the background, and then in the public domain, it's a whole other story that is running, such that the murderers, or rather the perpetrators, could think that they are safe, and then maybe they're hunted down. It could be a good strategy by the police if that is what is happening, that they're trying to put out another face like they're doing nothing, yet they're actually doing something. Yeah. Thank you so much,
Thank
Dr.
you very much, Lawrence. Let me bring in Desire. Desire, you've heard what Lawrence has been saying, and has been making a very good diagnosis of almost the whole situation. Given the demographic factor, you can look at most of the people that are killed are either old people, female, who are vulnerable, and when you look at they are the poor. If you look at where they are killed from a place where there is a lot, I mean, the houses are so, ramshackled. Would you relate that to this prevailing situation and make sense out of it as well?
Thank you so much, and thank you, Lawrence, for your analysis. and where you've gotten us. What I see is very interesting about what is happening right now is the evidence that we see surfacing, and again the demographics of who has been affected. Because evidence does surface, and Lawrence, you've done a good diagnostic of the evidence that does surface, what the police could extract from this evidence. But the bigger question for me is, why hasn't the police even done any efforts into using that evidence? And then we put that against what is actually happening, and who are the people actually being affected, and who are the people dying. These are people in in houses. We're talking about people in impoverished areas in Masaka. We're talking about old people, whereby such advanced, it's not even advanced technology, but whereby these extra these extra, having extra care and having extra cameras is not even affordable, or it's not even thought of, because the strategies of security within their homes and compounds is different. So for me, the big question is that, why do these videos surface, and who are they for? Because they're not even being used for what they're intended to be used, which is evidence. And then looking at the demographic of who's being affected and how is it being used in favor for a certain weaving of a narrative. So I want to start this conversation with, or this analysis with, recently everyone has focused on the fact that it was said that this happened because these people did not vote. The opposition focused on that, did not vote for the current president. The opposition focused on that a lot. Everyone's been focusing on that a lot. But also something that Enanga said recently in a statement, uh, Enanga said that the two MPs who are being blamed for these brutalities were being their what is it called? Their motive, in like criminology, they call it motive. So their motive for doing this, for killing people, what's being used as their motive, and the reason as to why they are arrested is that they were executing this so that they make people hate the government more, which doesn't make logical sense. We all know that, especially what came with this wave and what came with the political articulation this wave, it showed turdiness of the regime. There is nothing you can do to make Ugandans or the Ugandan public more read and tired and in despair to get rid of this regime. So when Fred Enanga comes out and says that the only reason why we have arrested these MPs is because we know for a fact that they contributed or helped to do this so that people would hate the government more. It doesn't make logical sense. So then another question is, what is the logic behind how police is functioning and carrying this investigation out? So the investigation is corrupted from the get-go because it doesn't make any rational sense. If if we were to say we were in a world, because all these things are allegedly, an investigation has to be carried out, you have to have suspects, but at least let the motive of your suspects be believable, because the motive that's been put forth is not even believable. The motive is that they want them to help the government more. And then we go to then the next step, whereby all the victims have been profiled as NRM supporters. So how are you making NRM supporters hate the government more? By killing them off. How are you spreading fear to hate this government more, and insecurity by killing them off? So what we see is a confusion to concoct this whole massacre that's happening into a narrative of insecurity, which doesn't make logical sense investigative wise from the get-go. And it's prying on the naivety of the population, because a frenzy of fear goes on into the public. And once that frenzy of fear happens, then the public, we cannot take in the information that we're being given and actually process it for what it is. If the deputy of police is coming out and telling me their motive is so that these people hate the police, hate the current government more, I think the people have already shown their tardiness with this government. And then to add on to that, it was last week, it shows you how inept this police is, especially as an arm of the state. If they instead, they have been tasked with investigating and getting evidence and making rational sense out of what is happening and producing results. But all they do is, when the protests, and these were just protests to bring attention to what was happening in Masaka, were meant to happen, they were so quick to bring trucks, to bring that violence of tanks and trucks into Masaka. But when you ask them to provide security, all you have is exaggerated, as it was once said, I like that term a lot, exaggerated askaris sleeping and sitting in chairs. And also after that, telling the residents that they too have to look out for themselves. So what we're seeing is an investigation that is going airway, that is not making logical sense, that is being politicized and weaved into a political event instead of attending to the matter at hand. And as Lawrence said, that evidence already shows us these are people moving around in big groups. These are people who know where they are. These are people who know what they're doing. These are people who even are confident in what they're doing. So all that has not been taken into account, and to prey and to kill the most vulnerable some of the most vulnerable people in our society, just to spread fear and to spread frenzy within the public. And that frenzy and fear within the public and has created again an incident where political events and politicians and political theories can start to thrive off of this actually very, very this it's a I've forgotten the word in English, but this very violent event that is happening. So what I'm trying to say is, when we look at everything that's happening, how the police is handling it, how the state is handling it, and the people who are dying, and the circumstances at which they're dying, and how evidence surfaces, and the attention that's being given to the evidence that surfaces, we get to a point whereby the only people who are benefiting from this are people who are weaving political narratives out of this. But where does that leave the Ugandan public? Where does that leave the Ugandan people? Where does that leave the family of those who have been affected? And where does that leave at least an investigation that honors the lives that, because I cannot imagine in your last moments in a dark room, in a small house by yourself, being butchered to death. What is happening is brutal. What is happening is brutality as we've seen it, as we've never seen it before. But the attention that is being given, and the fact that this has become a NRM versus NUP, it's that the rhetoric even has come in, really does not give justice to the lives of the people that have been lost in this. It doesn't bring pressure onto the state to do an investigation that is worthy of public reception. It shows that it just, I think I will stop there, because it just shows how deeply entrenched we are in a political dilemma that does not serve the people of Uganda.
Thank you very much, Desire. Thank you for the insight, and always appreciate. Let me bring in Senior Chendo here. I think you have heard what Desire and Lawrence were saying. Basically, if you look at what Desire was talking about, we're trying to analyze the demography of those people that seem to be the victims of the machete. Many of them are old, female, having very ramshackle houses and all that. And when you relate that to, again, all of them, I think if not 90% are NRM supporters, happening in Buganda, where NUP NUP got a majority. So how do you relate those chronology of events related to these matters, Mr. Chendo? Are you with us? Do you hear us, or you got stuck? Let's go ahead. Let's have Lawrence back onto the role. Lawrence, look at the arrest of Honorable Sejirinya and Honorable Sewanyana, who have been remanded to Kitalia. Some people, I've heard a lot of people talking about this issue, and actually I had one of the critiques of NOP saying that this is just an act of possibly diversion, trying to divert people from training issues. You know, I like that word diversion, because some people use it in a way possibly they don't understand the meaning, or they understand it more than I do. So let me bring in Senior Chendo before I bring you. I think we've now gotten him. Mr. Chendo, can you give us your analysis regarding the issue of the demography?
Before I give you the issue of demography, I really want to apologize for our intermittent network. We have had problems joining in. Nevertheless, I'm happy at least I can chip in a word or two. Now, in the first place, I want to say it is actually very, very, very bad if death should be politicized. If anyone should use death for political reasons, that's very, very, very unfortunate. And I really think this death should not be politicized. The question is rather interesting. Why is it that it is these old men or old women and vulnerable children who have been killed? I think you have sent condolences to the families of those people, like the president of Uganda has done, because what I saw is that he called in the victims and had to pay in some cash as condolences. But I, for one, would think we need to really investigate before we look at the demographies. We need to look at the nature of the killings. Yes, these people have been killed. They have been killed with those. But is it only that, or there's something in the offing? That's my thinking. There could be something which is only represented through the machete people. I think this killing cannot just be taken for granted. I want to think this.
I am afraid we've lost Mr. Chendo once again. Let me go back to Lawrence, has made it clear right before Mr. Chendo came in. Okay, let's have Lawrence chip in over there, because we lost Mr. Chendo. And Mr. Chendo, let's work on your sound, and later on I'll bring you over. Let me have Lawrence. Lawrence, if you look at the arrest of Mr. Sewanyana and Honorable Sejirinya, people are talking of it as a diversion that I can't know. Is it the semantic of, use of words in a different way? What would you talk about that as well? Your sound seemed to be lost.
Sorry, I actually, it was my fault. It was on my end. Just to go in right there to supplement what my brother and the elder Mr. Chendo was trying to make. I think, yes, it's unfortunate that death is being used for political mileage right now, as far as the statements that are getting made out there are concerned. Just looking at what exactly the question you made is, is it a diversion that Honorable Sewanyana and Honorable Segirinya, or popularly known as Mr. Appetite, that this could be a diversion. Um, that is probable, and it points, and indeed it is a probability I'm willing to accept as a trajectory of where this is actually, where um, these whole events are actually tending towards. Because it's no secret that Mr. Update or Honorable Sawanyana is a popular politician right now, having achieved so probably much more than what some leaders out there in the public domain have done for their people. He comes up, he spends all his time making Facebook live videos and YouTube live videos. He's engaging people back home as much as he can, and more so even the people in the diaspora. And of course, the people in the diaspora probably connect more because they are less encumbered by internet connection issues that people back home face. But however, Segedi Aziz, as a person himself in politics right now and leadership, he's a hot cake. He has the attention of everyone. He goes and he contests for the MP position and he wins. And in no time, he has ambulances, he has the MRI machine that he has promised the residents of his constituency. These are all very good achievements as far as his political career is concerned. And I wouldn't be surprised if, in light of him being able to achieve all this in a short span of time, that some other probably members of parliament have not been able to achieve, given the same amount of time and the same resources and the same public to come and try to engage, could go and try to engage and try to solve a few issues they have in their own constituencies. So for me, it's no surprise that he could be on the list, or rather, he is on the list, and in this case, he has been summoned and remanded, as we hear at the moment. But again, why should a well-functioning government or state, with all the power that it can, all the resources that it has, just try to focus on one member of parliament just like that, and try to pull him into the limelight of the case or the matters that are happening, and try to move everyone's attention to that? I think it's kind of deliberate. It is not the first time it is happening. So many times suspects are put into the limelight only to be cleared at the end when the tension has actually cooled. I think the public is trying to demand answers and trying to demand for action. So the police has found it probably more befitting to put these highly connected political individuals attached to these matters. And the reason for that is that at least it is going to start to build an image like it is actually doing something to help solve matters.
Can you hold it from there? Let me bring in Senior Chendo. Senior Chendo, you are trying to bring a point. I would like you to bring it over.
I want to thank you once again. The technology has disoriented me in one way or the other. However, I want just to pick it from what Lawrence has been saying. Indeed, diversion. Now, when you look at Segirinya, there are some questions one needs to pose, because when you look at the personality of this person called Segirinya, is just a very simple person. The question is, who has brought Segirinya up to the level he is? Who has made him do all that he has been able to do in a very short time? Now, the question is, who has shielded Segirinya? Because when you look at what has been happening, Segirinya has got a deficit in terms of academic documents. The question is, who has shielded Segirinya from being served in terms of court papers? Who is it that has been shielding? He shielded him while in Chitalia the first time, and the prisons actually saying this man was never served. The question is, who is it that is shielding Segirinya? The question also comes up. Segirinya has been a star performer in this very, very short time. He's giving out this, he's building this. The question is, where does he get this money? However, when you look at, there is a motif between Segirinya, Nsereko Muhammad, and Katoro Bwama. Katoro Bwama was shielded throughout the 5 years in parliament, although the case has only been decided. So when Segirinya is arrested, one should know that whoever is arresting Segirinya is interested in Segirinya as a politician, not as a criminal. One way or the other, someone is again trying to build Segirinya. Maybe that people should look at him as a martyr, a political martyr, which I think is not right. This man is being built to become a political martyr. Actually, at the end of the day, he is a decoy, a very good decoy who is being used. So when you talk of diversion, that's what I think. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senior Chendo. I always appreciate that. It seems like you're giving a very good experience to the youngsters when it comes to analysis. Let's have a break, and when we come back from the break, we're going to go further into the discussion because we want to find out exactly what is happening. And I'll ask you, the discussant, to give us also what you think will be the solution as we try to go to the second part of our discussion. Let's go for the break. Don't go away. Welcome back once again to the second part of this show, and we are trying to discuss issues that are trending in Uganda, basically the issue of the machete, which has become a very big problem to the people. Everyone is worried of their lives, and we are trying to make sense out of this, and how can we help in this discussion, how can we help our people that are really so scared. With me in the studio once again, I have Lawrence Semugoma, who is an analyst and a cyber security expert. I have Desire, the analyst, and I have Mosei Chendo, the senior and also an analyst. Let's go back to Desire. Desire, we by the time we left it, we are trying to look at the issues that people developing out of this scenario. We are looking at issues to do with the arrest of the two members of parliament, and how is it related to this? Is there anything that they are trying to divert us from, or it is a real scenario? Let's go into that, Desire.
I'd like to thank Senior Chendo for his last addition to this conversation. And I think as a population, we should move away from the word diversion, and actually adjust to the word. I like the word, not like, but it is, sorry, my English is leaving me today behind. I'm a little bit behind on my English. My Luganda is coming first. But I think we should leave the word diversion and focus on the word decoy, because that is very important when you start to look at it at that angle. If someone tells you, I've put this story to divert you from that, the question is, where's the decoy, and what's actually the thing that I'm not supposed to look at, and then look at the decoy. And I like that Senior Chendo used the word decoy, because I do think that in this state, he's just the decoy. This government uses a lot of decoys and red herrings to just take away from actually what the government or the state should be doing in all its institution, which is lawmaking. So to just add more onto that and break that down, it's Honorable Seth Girinya and Sewanyana have been arrested. And in so many newspapers that I've been reading, they're written down as lawmakers. But everyone has commemorated Honorable Seth Girinya for what he's done so far. But what law has he voted on or impacted that has changed the current status of Ugandans as we know it? What parliamentary debates has he participated in that is in favor for the change that Ugandans voted for when they took the umbrella? When we start to look at those things, it amounts to zero or even negatives. He's not even expected to be strong in that facet, apart from administering. Because one thing we have to realize as Ugandans is our naivety has been preyed on. We have to accept the fact that especially this goes out to everyone born in the 90s or the 80s, we're the biggest of the population. We grew up in an era whereby a lot had happened, war after war after war. Our parents, our grandparents, all traumatized, and that leads into a population that can be preyed on for aspirations of peace and aspirations of, because we longed for peace, there was hope for peace, for hope for change to come. It came with everything comes to us with a wave, and it created this bracket of naivety that has been reinstated by the institutionalization of all the institutions in Uganda to just serve one regime. So I go back to the question of the two honorable members of parliament being arrested. The fact that they're honorable members in parliament is just an empty title. Because my question is, they're supposed to be lawmakers. What laws have they affected? Have they discussed? Have they brought forward to parliament? So now, as a public, we should worry because of their title, and worry more because they are of the opposition. I hope that we see where I'm going with this argument of how this decoy is empty and irrelevant to changing the lives of Ugandans. But yet again, a problem that is actually facing a population and the masses becomes individualized and then serves the purpose of a certain class, and actually doesn't even serve the people who have been affected. So the word diversion does not do this justice. I think if we look at it in terms of the decoy, then the question should be, what does this decoy do? The decoy takes away pressure from the police to actually do its job, from the LDUs. They can now come in camera and spew nonsense and actually just stand there and take away the responsibility to do a proper investigation from themselves. because now members of parliament are involved. Now this calls for the leader of opposition to have a say. This calls for the leader of the opposition party to have a say. This calls for the president to have a say. The president had the first say. The current, not president, illegitimate president had a say. And then when he had a say, when Museveni had a say, now the opposition government can say, oh, we thought when he started having a say, he was joking about it. But we've seen these patterns play out. And because we are naive, and at every incident that they come, it only causes frantic and actually not reflective response. It comes like electricity, when electricity shocks you and then leaves your body. So this is definitely, he's being used as a decoy. And the question should be, why does the ruling class now need a decoy? Why is a decoy needed right now? What has changed? Because opposition is in parliament, they're supposed to be making laws. We haven't even seen that play out. A lot of promises were made. But now, instead of parliament to be functioning, all we're seeing is finger pointing in parliament. It's a disgrace. So I think that's why I'm going to end that with, now parliament has become, is parliament even functioning? When last did parliament sit down and make laws? These people have been written down as lawmakers being imprisoned for wanting to create insecurity against the ruling party. So again, I ask, when did actually parliament last sit and make laws, apart from honorables going around and serving and giving people quick relief stuff? Because I'm not gonna lie, Honorable Secretary has been popular because of the hand he has laid out for people. But the biggest hand he could lay out for the people of Uganda, and this is just my opinion, is in actually being part of making laws that will change the current material needs of the people, being in parliament, making these laws. Because you can come to me today, me and my family, and give me a sack of rice. That's a bandage solution. We're going to eat it for the month, but where are we going to get next month? If you're in parliament, if you do both, I want to see him do both and actually make a law to extend food security. Things like that have not been done by these members of parliament that are now being held, but we're in a frenzy and we're supposed to worry because members of parliament are being held for a crime that there is no evidence that they committed. The motive that's blamed against them is irrelevant. And then on top of that, they're being used as a decoy. But the question that I even myself haven't found the answer for, why does this government right now at this period need a decoy?
Thank you, Desire. Thank you very much for the insight. Let me bring in Lawrence. Lawrence, as a security analyst, here comes a situation. People come, bring impromptu messages, put them on people's doors or anything, write them on the door or whatever. And what they have said exactly happens. And the government cannot take such, a clue, because if it is mentioned, they come, they do it, they go away with it, and the government cannot trace those people. Does that give us a clear picture of whether we have a government in Uganda?
Thank you so much again, Dr. Jacob. Do we have a government? I think we do. If not indeed, at least we have it in word. And the reason I say that is because if the current organized state as is unable to fulfill all its mandate, like it is actually so much displaying right now, you have people dying and then the questions, and then no one is answering. Well, the reason why we have a government in the first place, or leaders, is because we want to be assured, we want certain liberties guaranteed, at least on a wider scale. Yes, we do have a government, but what kind of government do we have? what is it willing to do for its people when they are faced with challenges like this? If we're to just go back by the definition of peace, peace, which is an element that the government has for long thrived on as its winning campaign line, that it brought peace and the security all over the country. When we see events like this unfold, and more so closer and closer to the center of power, which is in Kampala, the metropolitan area, is that still peace? Peace is just a disturbance from tranquility or the pursuit of happiness or anything you want to call it. But is that what we're having right now? Is there really an absence of war? Because that, again, is what peace is. Sometimes it's the absence of war. For me, this points to actually an ongoing silent war, which might be going, because we cannot exactly rule that out, that these machete-wielding men are just uncoordinated, and they are from, it probably just a game or scheme that those two honorable members of parliament organized, and it is happening all over the country. If I may just refer you to today's monitor, they have the security organs actually trying to tell people in the northern part of the country trying to warn them against moving in the night, or moving in the after night falls. There's a very interesting picture there. I don't know if our producer, our technical team, can put up that picture of the northern Uganda insecurity update from the Daily Monitor today. You have those very well dressed security operatives. I like this picture because for once I can see the army taking part in the investigation that is happening, trying to solve some of the insecurity issues the country is facing, and more so in the northern part of Karamoja. I'm just wondering why we don't have these uniforms in Masaka or Entebbe or anywhere else, and yet we have army bases close in all those places. Now, this picture is very interesting if you look at it. These security operatives are trying to get the serial number from a gun that was recovered from one of the residents' homes in Kotido district. This happened at the end of last month. It's still relevant as today because it's related to security. But I would like you to focus on the manner in which this evidence is actually handled. Why are you handling this evidence without any protection? How are you, at the end of the day, going to come back and tell the public that this gun belongs to Opio or Okelo or whoever you picked it from? You're holding it with your hands. You're trying to get the serial number off. This shows that maybe the operatives did not get at least basic training in evidence handling. You shouldn't really be handling evidence in this kind of manner. These are some of the simple mistakes that are done, probably not knowing the impact of their actions, but to some of us who probably see far and beyond and are going to analyze some of these images beyond just what you're pulling out, because it looks like a very good news headline up there when you say the security is warning the people of Karamoja against night travel. And we are, or actually the police or law enforcement is doing something in this regard and investigating, and they are all clouded up in their boots and very nice attire and trying to assess the evidence. Just pick the gun, probably get the suspect as well who has the gun, take him into custody, hand over the evidence to one of your investigators. More so one who can pick fingerprints and then go ahead to get the serial number and then run that by the database that you have, or the national arms or whichever guns we have in the country, and then try to pinpoint to who the gun actually belongs to. Again, this is another desperate attempt by law enforcement to try to reassure the public that they are doing all that they can within their means to guarantee security in the country. But it's not exactly reassuring everyone that much, more so if you're handling evidence in this kind of manner. This doesn't really look like, it is not supposed to be of a well-trained police unit that is primarily focused on handling the investigation. That I'll just leave that at that, but that doesn't give me any kind of reassurance that much is going to come out of this investigation, because after those policemen have handled that weapon like that, at the end of the day, who are you going to pin when you go to court? You're going to have 23, I don't know how many fingerprints that are all over the gun. So those are some of the issues that come up, and then evidence is soiled. And this has happened over and over again, where when the guns come out and...
someone who has come from a war-torn area. There is opposition, rebellion survives.
I wonder whether that is actually right.
You have opposition in Kasese.
Let's have this video first, and then we can look at what is going on.
In Teso, rebellion survives. You have opposition in Acholi, LRA survives.
I wonder whether we can have
no
the picture
opposition,
later.
rebellion does not survive.
Go ahead.
I'm talking as a political scientist. So what message am I saying? Now we have Masaka area.
Okay, thank you again, Dr. Jake. I thought that video was rolling, but I guess we ran into a small technical glitch right there. I think that was our brother from the north, Dongo To, trying to explain how insecurity usually follows the opposition in some sort of way. Wherever there's a dominant opposition, somehow insecurity follows, the residents or the inhabitants of that area. Just going back to where I left that is what is happening in northern Uganda. And again, this, I think, is a clear image to show you that the insecurity is not just happening right now to the residents of Masaka. Earlier on, you've seen what has happened in the suspects that were arrested in Entebbe. Right, so different incidents. When you go to the Karamoja, you're seeing what is happening. So this is now probably something on a national scale that probable state of emergency could be issued if at all the state was actually willing to go that far into ensuring that the citizens of the country, or rather Uganda, are actually kept alive and well and in peace. If you look all these isolated instances, like the one you have in Entebbe, it's different. It looks like there's a feud between the mayor and his former employees, because the letter that is attached in there is pointing towards, you thought we were joking, but right now we're going to come and kill you one by one. If you look at that wording again, just going back to that evidence in Entebbe, that shows you there's a whole elaborate plan these perpetrators have. We're going to kill you one by one. I think that is the right word in there. If I may just read the letter impromptu as is, it says, Sebo twagala obukadde bubiri, 2 million. After reading this message, and it's bad English, trying to mix English and Luganda, Sebo tukuwadde essaawa 7 nga okoze kye twagala. If not, tugenda kunogola one by one. One by one shows you there's more people they were targeting here. And then they go further to say, Sebo Mukulu Kalema, Ronald, ogenda kubonaabona okuva leero, n'ekirala ogenda kuttisa busajja bwo. Mwabiyita ebyokusaaga nti tukanga, naye ogenda kulaba ekiddako mu nnaku entono ennyo. And then they sign it off with Mr. Kalema down there as I don't know how that fits into this whole thing. But again, looking again at the top of that letter that the police puts out, it looks like someone was trying to balance a beer in their home. I think it's 12,500 at the top, 2,000, 2,000. I don't know if the murderers or the suspects were trying to calculate how much they needed to pick from this person, but that is at least the evidence that the police has put out there in relation to the ongoing investigations into the Bijambia that are happening. So looking at that and what is happening around the country, I think we can all just agree that this insecurity has now reached a point whereby we cannot even just scapegoat a few members of parliament and think that is going to quiet the issue or that is training at the moment in everyone's mind. Looking at just Honorable Segrinya and Honorable Alan Sewanyana's court battle right now, at least according to the Observer, they are like, these two had accomplices, which are Bruno Wamala and John Mugera. So apparently they were able to kill or to murder 3 people, Francis Kiza, Sulaiman Kakoza, Tadeo Kiyumba. Oh God, may all their souls rest in peace. These are people who are actually now already dead. And they go on further to say that one Ronald Seviato of Setala village in Masaka City was able to survive this. So this is what the official statements are happening right now. But again, if you're going to accuse a member of parliament who is considered to have very good reputation, it shouldn't just be on just the perpetrators coming up and charging or rather pinning those members of parliament that they are actually their accomplices. Do we have evidence on that regard? Do you have phone records, texts? Was money exchanged? Did these two or do the members of parliament even know who Bruno Wamala is or John Mugera in the first place? Have they ever met them? Are they related to them? And again, most importantly, what is the motive? Why were these people killed? I don't think, or at least what the official statement is being put out there is that it is just to cause insecurity. And then you would wonder and ask, why should an honorable member of parliament be interested in just causing insecurity in the country? And in another area, does he have a point to prove that maybe whoever or maybe the MP in Masaka isn't working as well? So there's some kind of silent competition that he needs to perpetrate a few criminal activities in another area to make it seem like he is doing or they are doing a lot more in their constituencies, like we've all read about Honorable Sewanyana and Honorable Segirinya doing all these above and beyond acts for his people in his constituency. So that's kind of where we are at that. But the evidence so far and the trajectory of this case doesn't give me any assurance or that much assurance that enough is being done to make sure that the rest of the country is at least kept at peace. This evidence really still lacks a lot to be desired and to really be considered good culpable evidence that is going to pin the suspects they have. Even the ones they have in Entebbe, when you look at the way the letter is written and all that, yes, you arrested 3 people. I don't know where the connection is between the 3. That is probably that we shall know eventually when more is done in the investigation in regards to the incidents in Entebbe. But the difference about that in Entebbe, as much as it's reported as a security incident, people have not been killed, at least in that area. It is just that these were caught. And I guess it's also the law enforcement trying to put up an image like it's doing something, that this time we got it. We got these people before they commit the act, which should be applauded if at all it's really rightly done, and in this case has actually saved a life. We should applaud, but I'm not so convinced yet that probably that is the intention or that is the whole story at that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lawrence. It's always a very good gesture when you bring in a lot of such expertise. I bring again Desire on board. Desire, Lawrence is trying to give the different kind of dimension about what is happening. I want you also to put your effort in as well, according to what Lawrence has been saying.
So, in regards to what's happening, looking at all of the evidence that has surfaced, first of all, one thing that we need to look at is the nature of the crime, which Lawrence has gone through extreme length and done very well to express, is the nature of the crime. How's the crime happening? So, there is all this evidence that points to the nature of the crime. And then you look at the suspects and how the suspects are being reprimanded and the evidence on which it's being based off of all. But then there's something interesting that Lawrence said that kept going in my head because later, before this segment, I asked why would the government need a decoy? What is actually happening? And then I thought back to after elections and something that all of us, most majority of Ugandans were in agreement to. We're in a state of capture. We, as the Ugandan public, have been captured by the ruling party. And it doesn't matter if the ruling party is NRM, if the ruling party is new, it's like just the ruling class as a whole has captured the people of Uganda into this relationship that we have with parliament and ruling bodies that does not serve the people. We're dissatisfied with what has been delivered out of the elections in total. The court case did not go where it had to go. And now we're left with not only crumbs, but we're left with almost nothing to refer to, but we're back in where we actually began 30 years ago or 20 years ago, before my existence on this world. So to go deeply into this, then I want to start so that I'm clear. I want to start from the nature of the crime. Sorry, I'm going to go over some of the things that have been said, but I'll be a little bit faster. The nature of the crime. How's the crime happening? You have bandits doing this, wielding pangas. That's the nature of the crime. Those are your suspects. Your suspects should not be Honorable Segrinyan Sewanyana. Your suspects should be at least 20 bandits who have wielded machetes and have been caught on some of this video footage. That's number one. Why is an honorable who wasn't in that place at the time being held captive? That doesn't make sense. The rationale behind this investigation doesn't make sense, which then makes that person a decoy. Number two, we're still talking about the nature of the crime. It's entering into houses of people who are vulnerable and probably by themselves in the nighttime in very remote areas. That's areas where people have been killed. When you come to the city, whereby you have CCTV camera, that has actually just been a point where evidence has come out that these people are out there. But when that evidence comes out, why is it heavily popularized? Because that's signifying. That's for the public to know that this is real. Because when it happens in Masaka to someone's grandma in a house in the dark and you don't get to see it, it doesn't enter your head. It doesn't enter your head. It doesn't affect you. But what happens when you actually have a video camera, CCTV camera, rolling on social media that actually shows 10 bandits wielding pangas? That enters the public's head. What does that create? That creates frenzies through the crowd, and that creates also confusion through the populace that the government or the ruling body in general, I'm not separating opposition or ruling class, because to me now we're left with the same structure. It's all the same. That gives them a conditioning to benefit from and weave narratives. Then when you have that, so we've moved on, we're still on nature of the crime, and then you're seeing the evidence, but the nature of the crime also, you have letters. Do you know how confident you have to be in committing your crime and not get caught, to have time to write a letter? The letter shows that this was all pre-planned. You have that element of premeditated. This stuff is premeditated. It's planned. It's arranged. This is organized crime. And then you have how the police is handling organized crime. What does that show about the police's training to handling crime and to handling especially organized crime? Why isn't this being treated as criminals who are organized and are moving fast and are actually serial killing people. But it's been diverted, and two red herrings have come up, which is the MPs. But then again, then the bigger picture, the question which was, why does this government need a decoy? What is the purpose of the decoy in this case? What is the state that's being created? We're being put, it's not that we're being put, we have been in a state of insecurity. What was the ticket for the government or any government to every transition? What have Ugandans been promised? This time round, we were promised peaceful transition of power. Museveni promised that there will be peace in Uganda. To create peace, Morris, you said this, which was brilliant and is very relevant to our situation as Ugandans. Sometimes for peace, you need war to not be there. But in order to create the idea of peace, war is always waged on Ugandans. Let's look at what happened to Northern Uganda. Northern Uganda has never been peaceful, even past Kony. Peace has never been given to the people of Northern Uganda, to the Acholi. It was a massive genocide. It was it was, what's the word? It was a killing of a people, and the trauma still live with them till this day. Even with everything that has happened with ICC and everything up till now, the people who actually caused that suffering to those people have not been caught. We all know it had a lot to do with the regime and how the regime handled it. But why then is this happening in Buganda? There has been whispers of genocide ever since this campaign started. There have been whispers of a possibility of it. But when this happened in Northern Uganda, when there was actually bandits and later on evidence proved that the bandits were actually people in the military, what was created? Concentration camps. What are the people being told to do? They're being told to leave and flee their homes. Now you're going to have masses and villages of people fleeing and leaving. What does that create? People who need a safe place to stay. Where do you put them? Again, we have this parliament allowing for possibly in the future, the creation of, I put this in quotation, safe places for people who are being affected with this, which will end up again, we see a replay of concentration camps where people are then put in there, easily attacked and killed. That is very similar to what happened in Northern Uganda. It is not different. A state of insecurity is created, and it's put into the mental of the people that war is actually happening. And after that is put, then that is executed and used by whoever it favors. And let us not forget, the illegitimate president has never denied being a warmonger. And anyone who serves in their parliament, in his parliament, is aware of this fact and has decided to play by that drum. So we have been in a state of war since 1986, have never left. Even before 1986, I would probably say, since Obote 1, have never left. But the one that started in 1986 always thrives off creating war to create hope for peace. And because the crowd is naive and the crowd is not tuned in, people's brains are preyed on, and these situations do not happen in isolation. They're not coincidental. They're all premeditated and
I think we have lost her. Let's wind up. We're trying to go for a break, and then when we come back, we try to wind up the show. Thank you. Let's go for a break for a moment.
Time takes a toll on everyone, they say. Time is merciless, it won't wait for us to change. Time, I am stressing out, I can't figure out what to say. Oh, time, just give us time. Time, looking back on pictures, and I find it hard to see Time takes a toll on everyone, they say. Time is mercy.
So,
Okay.
Dr. Juko, we cannot hear you as your sound is muted on your end. Dr. Juko, we're unable to hear you.
Once again, we are welcome to the last part of the show. Thank you very much. With us in the studio, we have Desire, the analyst. I have Lawrence Semgoma, and we have Mr. Chendo, who has been with us earlier. Let's have the final part of this show as we try to wind up. Let me start with Lawrence. Lawrence, what is your last, touch on this, and what advice would you give either to government or the people of Uganda?
Thank you so much again, Dr. Juko and Desire and Mr. Chendo, even if network has sort of stood in the way between the wider world and his voice out there. It would have been good to hear what his views are from the ground. But if I might wrap it up, I would say this.
Lawrence, before you wrap up, I wanted you to use your expertise to make a little comparison between the kind of massacre in Uganda vis-a-vis the massacre in the US. And, I want you to make that kind of simple comparison.
Okay, if I may, thank you so much. I would. There's so much ground to cover. There's so much that is documented, especially about massacres in the States. But if I might just focus on just police shootings in the US, which have led to hundreds or if not thousands of people killed in line of duty, where the police engages the public, and then they result into deaths. Just looking at that evidence file that we have up there, that is picked from Statica, which is a very good site or reference to pick statistics from global statistics about virtually anything. You can see the States is at least keen or rather good at documenting everything, however bad it is. These are numbers of people who have been killed. And it's quite interesting that, especially when the Black Power, the Black Power movement comes into reign, it always makes it seem like the most people are getting killed. But these statistics actually show that there are fewer blacks who get killed when the police actually engages the public. However, it's not a small number because also the population of the blacks is actually less in the country. So even if the number is lower than the white people who are killed, it is still big because they just occupy just about 13% of the demographic. The States, what I would like to commend is that they document all these events. One person is killed, two people are killed, the evidence is there, it's put out there. Now, you will notice that according to the data that we have there, the shootings have actually somewhat, they're all over the place, but they're decreasing in some sort of way in some demographics than others. There are still more white people killed than black people even to this day compared to how many were killed 5 years ago, or rather 4 years ago in 2017. It's the same thing with the black people. More are killed 5 years ago than those that are killed right now. And again, we can attribute that to some of the efforts that have been made by various human rights activists and groups out there, and also the white people also coming in to join the blacks, and they're like, oh, this is actually happening, we need to take action. The numbers have actually slightly dropped. I couldn't say slightly because if you lost about 400, let me put it to 400 people 5 years ago, and then as of this year, you're down to 190. That's for the demographic of the white people who are actually killed in line of duty. That shows you that at least there's an improvement right there, that certain measures or tactics or processes or policies have been put out there to make sure that you cut that number to below half. So that these are the efforts that at least that are made in this affluent world where we are residing, where the numbers, at least they are dropping almost in every demographic. The whites, they're dropping. The blacks, the numbers are dropping. Black people killed 5 years ago in 2017, there were about 223. If you look at 2021, we are at 108. Well, the year isn't yet done, the numbers could get up, but at least you can see that the numbers are dropping in some sort of way. If you go to the Hispanic community, it's the same thing. 170 people killed 5 years ago, and then it's been somehow dropping. Right now, the number of Hispanics that are killed are just down to 59. That means that there's a great government intervention or incentive in there that has been put up in law enforcement to make sure that the Hispanics aren't just killed anyhow. If I might just relate these statistics and then look at where we come from, our motherland, do we have a picture of a sort, to put out there to show that something is actually being done? I am not sure. I haven't learned on any such data to actually confirm that they're actually also doing the same. But if I may, just looking at, there's a video that I think it was on Ghetto TV. This was actually mainstream news about 4 years ago, again, 2017, when you had the machete wielding men also causing havoc in the same area, Masaka. I don't know why that happens to be the beacon area where all this is happening. People came out and they were like, well, we were paraded by the police, promised, I think it was 20 million or something, to just be like, we are the people who are committing these crimes. And if the police can actually come out to organize a team of young people out there just because maybe they don't have a job or they probably don't know or have a purpose in life that they're going to attach or accept crimes they've not committed. And all this is just made with a view of just reassuring the public that, yes, we've solved this crime so everybody can go back to work. I don't think that helps. And I think that has been shown in what is happening right now, where the machete wielding men have returned. The Vijandi have returned. So if they were solved 5 years ago, like they claim, that all these people were arrested and incarcerated and probably prosecuted and locked away like they should have, then we shouldn't be having these reoccurrences, because law enforcement is supposed to weed out all these rogue elements. But we are having a replay of the same thing 5 years ago, and this is exactly what happens when you don't exactly close a case or get to the bottom of it or carry out a good investigation and close it. You leave the bad people out there, the bad men out there. The people who are into this kind of organized crime syndicate that seems to be happening in an almost random way across the country. But again, it is not random. We just didn't do a good job the last time it happened. We did not learn from what was happening then. And when you don't learn from certain events, you end up postponing criminal activities like we are experiencing right now. So I would just appeal to the public to be cautious, keep yourself as safe as you can, because as much as anyone out there is going to tell you that they can guarantee your peace or security, the first form of security is you. It is you to protect yourself. Lock your doors. If you hear anything, form small groups in the community. Like there was an idea of community policing. have those contacts in your communities or local groupings, and you're like, if something happened at a house A, there should be a contact in there, and probably to the local law enforcement in the area to help come to your rescue in case something happens. But on a wider scale, when it comes to the government, I would just want to appeal to the state to do its damn job. It's as simple as just do the job. You have the people's trust. You're put into the position whereby you can affect real change. Some of us can only analyze and give you opinions and probably some guidance or input into whatever you want to do, or you should do to make sure that you protect the people of the country. That's what we're going to do. But you are in the driving seat. Take the wheel. You have the responsibility to guarantee people's safety.
Noop or nap,
So
the way we call it in a
please, I would like to leave that at that. But otherwise, these conversations are actually good to take the message far and wide so that people can pay close attention to what is happening to the people back home and do something about it. I do not want to insinuate or rather indicate that there might be another kind of war that is happening, which seems to be the case, because the only reason the state, which has all the resources and power, to fail to just solve these incidences, they seem to be isolated and fewer. They should be able to swing in. If they're trying to ignore it, it might indicate that there's probably a war that they don't want the public to know about. And it's the reason they are so desperate. Now looking up these MPs and so on, I am meant to understand MP Sewanyana was actually in Japan at the time they were charging him. And then Honorable Lukwago is like, you're looking up Sewanyana, he was out of the country. So how and when did he meet and get into this whole syndicate or organized crime to ensure that it happens? And of course, as we know, the judiciary was also very. It did what it always does: ignore evidence and just continue to remand the suspects. But what is interesting is that they're supposed to be on remand for about 6 months. I think that was toned down to a week or so. So they're supposed to be appearing in court next week. This is, again, according to Honorable Kwago, he was like, this is compounding the issue. If you're not getting the suspects, the people actually carrying out these criminal activities, you're postponing the problem. Focus on the actual suspects, the people on ground. Let them give you the information they can. It could just be a diversion. Also, they were told and prepped, string in a few MPs, then people will listen to you. Or they're being tortured, and that's why they're saying all this. It leaves us in a state whereby we are not really reassured that we are safe. But again, time will tell. And I'm hoping at the end of the day, people knowing that this is happening at the scale it is and efforts that are done globally to try to curb this, they can be better informed to protect themselves in the first place and demand from these various agencies of government to actually guarantee or actually do their job and do it right. Thank you so much, Dr. Juko and fellow hosts.
Thank you very much. Desire, before you wrap up, I would like you to relate what Lawrence has said. Try to compare the two, because he has tried to give us the statistics, the data concerning US. I would like you to, from your point of view, to give us how do you relate the response, because things happen both sides, but the response seems to be different from the security organs.
So in regards to the states, before I start this conversation or delving into the subject, I'd like to start with the statement that, or the question that everyone should be asking themselves is, what happens when the state actually is the killer, is the aggressor, is the one that kills and disposes of its citizens? I think there's a term, a very good author that I like. I think his name is Achille. He came up, was it him? I'm not sure. But if you search the term called necropolitics is the ability of the governing body to decide who gets to live and who gets to die. So to go back to the evidence that Lawrence did bring ahead. Yes, you see, the that happens in the US is that evidence is always provided but manipulated. And the difference with Uganda is that there is no need for evidence, but you can go ahead and manipulate the public. So the question is, why do I think this and say this? It's because when you look at the situation in the States and the statistics that were provided, is that statistically, white people are being killed more than African Americans by the police. But that statistic, even though might be true, but have we looked at the proportionality of these statistics? But even before we go into proportionality, we do know in the back of our heads that African Americans are massively incarcerated by, by the police and by the privatized prisons. And so many of them die in prisons as well. And these are also numbers that can be accounted to police violence and state violence. We all know, and there's a lot of evidence for this and paperwork that has been done to support that. Even so many police departments in the state see themselves as gangs. This is organized crime. So what I'm trying to point out is that the state itself, the governing body itself, it's not just a Ugandan problem. This is a global thing, because that's when you want a ruling class that wants to stay in power. It has the ability to participate in organized crimes and gangs. The difference is the United States will provide evidence that it manipulates to weave a narrative, whereas in Uganda, magic happens. Just random statements are blubbered with no supporting evidence, but because the people making these statements believe that they got power from the power that be. It's been incepted in our minds that these people have the ability to make these statements. As I learned this from yesterday's show, watching yesterday's show, is that idea that they are serving Museveni. That's an idea that's been incepted into our brains. That is the powers that be. If you're serving in that lane, or if you get your powers to carry out your job by the illegitimate president, or if you serve within line of what he wants, because he said this before, he doesn't care if he has a jerrycan in parliament as long as it wakes up and votes. So again, in Uganda, is that once you're given that from the powers that be, you can come out and make random statements with no evidence to back it up. The different, and then that is manipulated to weave a narrative. So my point being is, I wanted to make this comparison to a lining of the state itself, the governing body, the people were running to and saying, resolve this issue, come up with a solution, help us, could be the ones that are causing these insecurities. So what do we do as a society and as a people to hold the state accountable when it is the one killing its own? It's like what do they call it? A chicken eating its egg. What do you do in those scenarios? When a mom eats its own child, when a cat starts to feed on its kittens, what do we do as a society to reprimand that? So again, it comes back to the fact that where we stand now. So going back, I will do one last comparison with what's happening in the States and statistics, is that yes, statistics are there and evidence is given, but it's manipulated to serve a certain narrative. Because I personally do look at the population of how many African Americans have actually lost their lives to police brutality in comparison to the proportional population of white American citizens that have actually encountered the same fate, and also looking at the hyper policing of African American communities. And then that's where I draw my conclusions from, plus the mass incarceration. Then to look in Uganda, we're talking about violence has been set in region by region. First it was Acholi, then it was Kasese. Now we're looking at Buganda. So this type of organized violence that can attack certain groups of people at given times has to be, it doesn't have to be, but it's organized from a higher up. So what I say is, what do we do as a populace? The only thing that we can do as a populace and as a population is to re-examine the states that we do live in. and to ask for, we can't keep on asking the same people to do the same thing, but what we can do is to actually start to look at different governments. And that's where I support federal and the installment of federal governance in Uganda. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Desire. I think we cannot go beyond this. We just thank you very much for the effort that you put in when you have to come over and discuss our issues that are trending within Uganda. This is the way our people are going to understand and try, to respond to calls of revolution. If people are gullible and naive, they are not likely to do anything regarding their country. It's always a pleasure to thank the guests, and we wish you could come over again, and we appreciate your time. We also thank our producer who has done everything possible that we can be able to broadcast this program. We also thank our viewers. You are the best, because without you, we cannot have to come on air. I hope you share the video. Go ahead and share the video and try to, explain what we discuss here to other people so that they can be able to get sense out of them. We cannot go beyond this. We just wish you a happy week and possibly a day over the weekend is gone, and we wish that the market issue goes down. Next on the show, you'll be Pochimbukwe coming over. Don't please go away. Try to come back and watch him. Thank you very much, viewers. God bless you, and God bless Uganda.